Rusty Yates stands by his wife and says that if she had received competent psychiatric care,
the kids would be alive and well, and Andrea would be well in recovery and would be unknown.
The law is quite a different matter.
Why did you charge her with capital murder?
If the question is why this case as opposed to other cases and all other things being equal, 5 dead children.
Simple as that. Clear and straightforward.
5 dead children.
All as loved and adored as the son Rusty Yates described as perfect Paul.
Well, he was. He had a, a super, just a super attitude. He was good to everybody, so everybody liked him, you know. He's a good kid.
Milton Hershey made his fortune mass-producing chocolate. His name and spirit are everywhere in Hershey. Even the streetlights are sculpted in the shape of Hershey kisses. Milton Hershey and his wife couldn't have children of their own, so they started a school for white orphan boys in 1909. In the 70s, it began accepting non-whites and girls. But now the alumni are saying the place is being turned into a very fancy prep school, which is not what Milton Hershey wanted.
I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Morley Safer.
I'm Ed Bradley.
I'm Steve Croft.
I'm Leslie Stahl. Those stories and Andy Rooney tonight on 60 Minutes.
On 60 Minutes 2, Wednesday at 8, 7 Central.
Before September 11th, it was the most horrifying story of the year. 5 children from a middle-class family in Houston, Texas, murdered, drowned one after the other in the bathtub of their home. The oldest was 7, the youngest 6 months. The confessed killer was their mother, Andrea Yates, who is scheduled to go on trial next month. Her case has evoked both rage and sympathy across the country. Why did she do it? No one disputes that she suffered from bouts of postpartum depression with psychosis, a serious mental illness brought on by childbirth and the demands of parenting. Tonight, for the first time, we will hear from Andrea Yates' husband, Rusty Yates, who stands by his wife and says that if she had received competent psychiatric care, their children would be alive today. She has pled not guilty by reason of insanity, but prosecutors say she is a cold-blooded killer who deserves to die for what she did.
The new mother.
Hello.
Mother for the 5th time.
This home video of Andrea Yates was taken by her husband, Rusty, just after she gave birth to their 5th child, Mary, last November. It was just 7 months before she would kill her baby daughter and her 4 sons.
Say cheese.
2-year-old Luke, 3-year-old Paul, 5-year-old John, and Noah, who was 7.
Everybody say goodbye. Bye. Bye to the camera.
Bye.
It is hard to comprehend that this 37-year-old woman, a former nurse and high school valedictorian, who's been described by everyone who knew her as a devoted and loving mother, is the same person who is charged with capital murder. The person who has the hardest time comprehending all of this is her husband.
She's a terrific mother, loved the children. They're always climbing up in her lap, and she'd read books to them, and just all kinds of stuff, and she loved them. And so I knew that there's no way, there's just no way that she would ever do anything like what happened.
But she did.
Oh, no, but it's because her mind was sick, that's it.
Although there were indications that her mind was sick, Andrea Yates never gave any signs that she intended to harm her children. But after her arrest, she told authorities that on and off for the past 2 years, she'd heard voices telling her that the devil was after the kids and that she needed to save them. She said they were, quote, hopelessly damaged. And on the morning of June 20th, Andrea Yates waited to act until after her husband left their home to go to his job at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, where he's a civil engineer.
Well, I got a phone call from my wife at 5 till 10, and she said, you need to come home. And she sounded really like very stern, very cold. I said, what's wrong, Andrea? And she said, you need to come home. And she hung up. And I was really getting nervous because of her tone. And I called Andrea back at the house, and she picked up the phone. And I said, Andrea, what's wrong? I said, is anyone hurt? And she said, yes. And I said, who? And she said, the kids. And I said, which ones? She said, all of them. And I mean, I was just devastated.
According to what she told police, Andrea Yates had filled the family bathtub and methodically drowned her 5 children. Then she dialed 911.
I drove home like I didn't have an accident on the way home, you know. I mean, I'm a nervous wreck, and I came in, police cars were everywhere, then they told me. And I just bawled, you know. For quite some time, you know, they wouldn't let me in the house. Andrew was in the house. And all I could do was sit there in the yard and just say, how could you do this? I don't understand. How could you do this? I don't understand. I cried. I did that for hours.
When you came home that day, and you said you were just sitting in the yard crying, did you see her?
I could see her through the window. And this is right, you know, probably within an hour after I found out, and I went and I was banging on the windows. And she just sat there. She didn't even look at me. She just sat there and just stared straight ahead, you know. She had this just real stern look on her face, and she was just staring ahead.
Andrea Yates was booked on first-degree murder charges and held without bail. 7 days later, the 5 children were eulogized by their father at the funeral service. For nearly an hour, Rusty Yates told fond stories about each of his children and then placed their favorite blankets in their open caskets and bid them farewell.
At the funeral, you described John as having a contagious smile.
Yeah, you can see it. I mean, he would smile real big and just made everybody smile.
You described him at the funeral as perfect Paul, the perfect child.
Well, he was. He had a super, just a super attitude. He was good to everybody, so everybody liked him. You know, he's a good kid.
He told me about Noah, his firstborn, and how he shared his son's love of rockets. He told me about how thankful he was to have Mary, his only girl, and Luke, who loved to have his picture taken.
Yeah, he always liked the camera. He'd always smile, but he always squint his eyes and say, you know, say cheese real big.
I mean, and looking at all of these pictures, I mean, it looks like a normal, happy family.
That's right.
By all appearances, the Yates were a normal, happy family until 2 years ago. Soon after the birth of their 4th son, Luke, Andrea began showing signs of depression. Twice in 1999, she tried to kill herself, first from an overdose of sleeping pills, and then, a month later, she took a knife into her bathroom.
She had a knife held up to her neck, and it's like she's looking at her neck trying to figure out how to cut herself so that she could successfully kill herself. And I said, give me the knife. And she said, let me do this. And I said, no, give me the knife. And she wouldn't do it. She just stood there like this. So I grabbed her arm and pulled it down, and I pried the knife out of her hand.
The next day, Andrea Yates was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. She was there almost 3 weeks and diagnosed with postpartum depression with psychosis. About 75% of new mothers experience some form of postpartum depression. It's commonly known as the baby blues and usually fades away in a few weeks. But Andrea Yates fits into a much more severe category that affects less than 1% of women. They may either kill themselves or their children. Psychologist Cheryl Meyer, who specializes in postpartum depression, has done extensive research on women who kill their children.
What was astounding about that category was that people describe them by and large as devoted mothers. Andrea Yates, perfect example. Devoted mothers, cared for their children, loved to be with their children.
Help me understand how this can affect a woman so much that she would kill her children?
Women begin to become very insecure about who they are and their parenting ability, and they begin to have thoughts. You know, maybe I'm not as good of a parent as I thought I was. Maybe I can't do this. They begin to make those thoughts even more monumental, and they grow larger and larger and larger. And I think that's how it can shift from becoming just almost an obsessive thought to a delusion, and even more severe, you know, slipping over into psychosis.
And generally speaking, what reasons do they give for killing the children?
There's a lot of discussion of the child being inadequate or tainted somehow by their bad mothering. Sometimes if it's a full-blown psychosis, the child is the devil and will be somehow rehabilitated or healed after they've, in fact, killed their child.
Andrea Yates seemed to fit that profile perfectly. There's no evidence that she abused her children, but during her hospitalization, she described being stressed trying to raise so many young kids, saying it was a big responsibility. I don't want to fail. According to hospital reports, she said she had recurrent obsessive thoughts and that most of them are over our children and how they'll turn out. She was treated with 2 antidepressants and an injection of the antipsychotic drug Haldol. Her husband, Rusty, says the response was remarkable.
Within a day, Andrea went from being completely catatonic to sitting on the couch with me in the visiting area, and we carried on just, I referred to it as the best conversation we've ever had. The thing I learned from it is that she needed the right medicine. When I saw her respond to the medicine at that time, I'm like, wow, there's hope. You know, there's hope that Andrea will return.
After returning home, Andrea Yates was soon back to the job of being a full-time mom, which she appeared to enjoy.
Bringing up the rear is Luke. Hello? All right.
She shot this home video of her children playing around the house.
This is our night ceremony here.
Andrea Yates homeschooled her oldest children, even designing their sets and costumes for a lesson on medieval history.
Okay, Sir John Yates. And he will go to his castle.
She also cooked and cleaned the house. Her doctor suggested she get some help taking care of the children and that she devote some time for herself. But Rusty says she chose not to.
So these were all things that she wanted to do.
Yes.
And she was comfortable with.
Right.
So this was never a situation where you thought she might be taking on too much, that this might be overwhelming for her?
Well, I talked about it to be sure that wasn't the case. I didn't want her to look back and say I missed out on something in life or not be fulfilled in what she was doing. So I talked to her last year and said, Andrea, you know, I could go to part-time work and have you work part-time. And then that way she has some activities outside of the home, and I know that being a nurse was really rewarding for her. And Andrea, what she said, I'm a mother now, you know, and that's what her fulfillment, that's where she got her fulfillment is, in teaching the children and raising the children.
How do you respond to those people who've said in some of these newspaper articles that you weren't giving her enough time alone, that you were a controlling husband, that you weren't doing enough to try to ease her burden?
Well, they don't know anything. I mean, they don't know us, you know. I mean, we had what I'd call a more traditional family, but to say those things is really, you know, unfair.
For more than a year after she got out of the hospital and was off all medications, by all accounts, life in the Yates family was back to normal. They decided to have another child.
There's the baby in there.
Ignoring a doctor's written warning which said that doing so would surely guarantee future psychotic depression.
That's a pretty ominous warning. Did you and Andrea, maybe given the circumstances, say maybe we've had enough kids, we shouldn't have any more?
Well, no. You know, we looked at that and we said, you know, well, this was a very difficult time. But then we said, well, would we rather have not had Luke? I mean, of course, we'd rather have Luke and have gone through that. What we were told is that there was a 50% chance that she would be depressed again if we had another child, and if she got depressed again. She would have the same symptoms as she had in 99, and that the same treatment that worked for her in 99 would work again.
Within months of Mary's birth, Andrea Yates' depression returned with a vengeance. It was a depression which her husband says led her to murder their children.
So for people who don't understand, I mean, you're supportive of her. You've talked to her, you've seen her, you go to visit her in jail.
Right.
And you support her today.
Absolutely.
There are people who don't understand, who would say, she killed your children, 5 children, her children. How can you be supportive? What do you say to them?
You know, the person that drowned those children is not Andrea. You know, if your brain's sick, then you can think things that aren't real.
So because of that mental illness, you're not angry with her, you don't blame her for what happened?
I don't blame her a bit. And that's, people find that just outrageous, I know, but I don't blame her one bit.
Rusty Yates does blame the doctors and the psychiatric hospital that treated his wife for the deaths of his children. When we come back, a close look at that hospital, which has come under attack from former patients, employees, and health department regulators for placing the public at risk. But the state of Texas blames one person, Andrea Yates, and we'll talk to the prosecutor who is seeking the death penalty. Trial for murdering her 5 children. If convicted, she could face execution by lethal injection. Could the Yates family tragedy have been prevented? Over the past 5 months, we've been looking into the treatment Yates and other patients have received at Devereaux Hospital outside Houston, part of a nationwide chain of psychiatric facilities. What we found raises serious questions about her care that her husband Rusty claims led to the deaths of his children.
If she received the medical treatment that she deserved, then the kids would be alive and well, and Andrea would be well on her way to recovery and would be unknown.
Rusty Yates says after the birth of their 5th child, Mary, Andrea's postpartum depression came back as had been predicted and was more severe than it had been after their 4th son, Luke, was born. 4 months after the arrival of the new baby, Rusty told staff members at Devereaux Hospital, where Andrea had not been before, that he was afraid his wife could not survive another night at home. She was admitted there in March of this year for the first of 2 stays.
Oh, her first day at Devereaux was, she became completely catatonic again. I mean, she was in her bed all day. She was just completely out of it. Not talking, not eating, not sleeping well, not drinking, not anything.
Her new psychiatrist, Dr. Mohammed Saeed, prescribed a combination of drugs different than the ones that had been effective for her before. He replaced the antipsychotic medicine Haldol with a newer drug which reportedly has fewer side effects. She was also placed in group therapy sessions for substance abuse, even though she was never diagnosed as a substance abuser.
She didn't use drugs or drink alcohol.
That's what's funny is that she never drinks, she never has smoked any drugs, nothing, never even tried it, you know. And I mean, she's like, you know, the cleanest person in town, you know, and here she is seeing films on substance abuse, you know, which is not what she needed.
Andrea Yates spent 12 days at Devereaux Hospital. 2 days before her discharge, hospital records say she was somber, sad, withdrawn, delusional with possible hallucinations, and suffering from impaired judgment. 2 days later, she was sent home. While she said she was feeling much better, hospital records show she had improved but still exhibited paranoid thought patterns and impaired judgment.
There's absolutely no reason she should have been let out of that hospital. It was just incomprehensible.
So you had no idea she was going to be discharged?
Absolutely none.
Her hospital records show that the day she was admitted, before she was ever treated, the hospital staff had already listed her expected discharge date as April 12th. And in fact, they did discharge her that day, although the record indicates that she still had significant symptoms. And that was not unusual, according to Jacqueline Pruden, who had been a supervising nurse at Devereaux.
I have seen patients discharged whether they are really ready to go back out into the world and face reality and face the real world or not.
Pruden worked at Devereaux before Andrea Yates was there. She left after an on-the-job injury and is now on disability.
You said that when you read that she'd been treated at Devereaux before she killed her children, that you weren't surprised.
I wasn't.
Because?
Because I have seen patients released before they were ready to go.
So they were discharged as being well, being okay, when in fact they weren't.
Stabilized on their medications. And in fact, they had no coping skills. They weren't getting the counseling and the education and the behavior modification, and they were being released before they learned the coping mechanisms they needed on the outside world.
Life in the outside world was an emotional roller coaster for Andrea Yates after her release from Devereaux, even though she was still on medication. By this time, Rusty had asked his mother to stay with Andrea and help out while he was at work. One afternoon in early May, in an ominous sign of what was to come, Andrea filled her bathtub with water. She could not explain why she did it, and that alarmed her husband, who brought her back to Devereaux. Officials at Devereaux Hospital, citing patient confidentiality, won't talk about her case. But recently released hospital records show that the last time Andrea Yates was admitted, on May 4th, she was in a near catatonic state. The entire time she was there, she was kept on suicide watch, checked every 15 minutes, day and night. On the day she was discharged, her psychiatrist, Dr. Mohammed Saeed, described her as improved but still appearing depressed. And the hospital records indicate that she was somber, flat, isolated, withdrawn, and showed impaired judgment. A little more than a month later, Andrea Yates drowned her 5 children. After she left the hospital, she continued to see Dr. Saeed as an outpatient. And 2 weeks before the murders, he stopped her antipsychotic medication, indicating that she was developing serious side effects. She stayed on antidepressants.
The doctor took her off antipsychotic medicine when she had psychosis. I mean, he diagnosed her himself. Postpartum depression with psychosis. He took her off antipsychotic medicine.
Rusty Yates says, and medical records confirm, that just 2 days before she killed the children, he took Andrea to see Dr. Saeed at his office and told him her condition was deteriorating. The doctor adjusted the dosage of her antidepressants.
Were you hoping that he would hospitalize her that day?
I didn't actually come out and say it, but yeah. I mean, I'm just, like I said, we were desperate. I mean, we were desperate. She was so sick, and I was at my wit's end. I mean, I'm just like, she's been sick for this long, help us. And he ended the meeting with, by giving her a pep talk, and he kind of looks at Andrea and he gets in her face and says, Andrea, you need to think positive thoughts, not negative thoughts, you know. You need to, you know, think more positively.
We tried to ask Dr. Saeed about his treatment of Andrea Yates, but he declined to speak with us. This is not the first time that Dr. Mohammed Saeed and Devereaux Hospital have been accused of malpractice. They've been sued for wrongful death and for improper monitoring of patients. One case is pending, the other was settled. Between 1993 and 99, the Texas Health Department substantiated nearly 100 complaints against Devereaux, including inadequate care and abuse of patients. The hospital has corrected the problems, but last year, state regulators placed Devereaux on an intensified monitoring and inspection plan. Whether or not Andrea Yates received proper medical care is of little concern to Harris County District Attorney Chuck Rosenthal, who charged her with capital murder and is seeking the death penalty in a county and a state that has executed more people than anywhere else in America.
Why did you charge her with capital murder?
If the question is why this case as opposed to other cases and all other things being equal, 5 dead children.
Simple as that. Clear and straightforward.
5 dead children who were, we alleged, killed by the person that they loved most in this world.
Andrea Yates has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and while both sides agree she is mentally ill, that in itself is not enough to find her legally insane. Her lawyers must prove that Andrea Yates did not know that what she was doing was wrong at the time she killed her children.
Can you imagine a case where a person would be so mentally ill that she would take the lives of her own children and you wouldn't seek the death penalty? Is that conceivable to you?
Yes.
She doesn't fit that category.
No.
Why not try to get her help in a mental hospital instead of charging her with a crime, no less the crime of capital murder?
I want to hold her accountable for the death of those children. That's my job, is to hold people accountable for what they do.
As you know, there have been a number of newspaper articles that have been written saying that attributing your wife's actions to mental illness, to postpartum depression, is essentially an attempt to absolve her of any responsibility. One person wrote that it's, quote, letting mommy dearest off the hook. Well, how do you respond to those people, Rusty?
Well, they don't know Andrea, you know, first of all. I think that a person's heart can be good while their mind is sick.
Another person wrote, he is just as guilty. He did not protect his children against a very dangerous woman.
Yeah, a family cannot protect themselves from a psychotic person. A doctor can by putting the psychotic patient in the hospital.
Rusty Yates still lives in the same house. The pictures of his family hang on the walls. The children's toys are still in their rooms.
He'd bounce all over the house with this thing with just a big smile on his face. He loved it. I wanted to fight for my kids, you know? I mean, it's like... What father, you know, wouldn't fight for his children, you know? And when it was too late, they were gone. I did everything I could, you know, to see that Andrea got well. You know, the medical community failed us. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Since she's been in prison, Andrea Yates has been put back on antipsychotic medication, and her condition has improved significantly. She's reported to be no longer delusional. A jury recently found her mentally competent to assist in her own defense, and her trial is set to begin on January 7th.
How do those missing teeth feel?
Okay.
I never minded losing teeth. You made the noodles easy to slurp. Try it.
Campbell's has that comforting combination of tender chicken, fresh egg noodles in a rich golden broth. Campbell's, good.
The Braun Synchro gives you Braun's closest shave ever. And its automatic self-cleaning system leaves your shaver so clean, it feels like new every day.
That snowball is a great way to tell customers Staples has technology gifts.
Greetings. Handhelds make terrific gifts. So do digital cameras.
Nice price.
Excuse me, could you tell me about the scanner fax copier?
No.
But I want to get it for my brother.
Get him a cell phone.
No, he really wants one of these.
He can't have her. I love her.
What?
No. Weeping.
It's okay. We found you someone else.
Oh.
Get more for less at Staples. 60 Minutes, a CBS News magazine, will continue.
When Professor Max Bickford asks his daughter to rewrite the school song, he won't believe his ears.
Whoa!
An all-new Max Bickford. Then, from Hallmark Hall of Fame, some say creatures from the sea are only legends.
You believe in fairy tales.
Tonight, one man is going to believe.
It will be better now.
Scott Glenn stars.
She must return to the sea, or she will die.
This is your home.
The Seventh Strain, CBS Tonight.
Hooked on Painkillers, the new drug epidemic, 48 hours, Wednesday.
Not a single payment till 2003. You pay no interest, no principal, no down payment through Christmas Eve at Calder's. Get that new Pennsylvania house, Broyhill, Stanley, England Living, dining, family, and bedroom furniture now. Pay for it in 2003. Get the appliances you need now. That new TV, the Sealy Simmons or Serta bedding you need now. Pay for it a year from now. Not a single payment for 1 year till 2003 through Christmas Eve at Calder's Furniture, Oak Creek, West Dallas.
Nobody reads books like the people of Schwartz Bookshops. And every month they carefully select 100 titles that are unique and interesting. This collection is called the Schwartz 100, and they're featured at 20% off. Schwartz Bookshops, where you'll not only save on the best sellers, you'll save on the best books.
Quitting the Classroom Monday on the CBS 58 News at 10.
At the root of the great national debate over education is, of course, money. Money to upgrade buildings and improve faculty. Money to level the educational playing field for the poorest of Americans. Then there's the legacy of the Candyman, the Milton Hershey School for poor children aged 4 to 18, which has more money than it can possibly spend. An endowment of close to $5 billion. More money per capita than even great universities like Harvard, Princeton, or Yale. The school was founded almost 100 years ago with a fortune earned from catering to America's sweet tooth, a legacy of good intentions that has produced a century later some bitter recriminations. We'll get to those, but first take a look at what the Hershey Bar created. The campus in Hershey, Pennsylvania was the bright idea of Milton Hershey, America's king of chocolate. The Milton Hershey School looks much more like an expensive prep school than a school for the nation's underclass, except there's barely a prep school this rich. A staggering choice of extracurricular activities, from the fine arts to more earthy pursuits. A tribute to its founders' belief in the land, but also more gentrified rural activities. Plus, of course, a hockey rink, indoor track, all the frills and finery to mold a thoroughly modern man or woman. Anything like home here?
No. Not at all.
Shonda, Andrew, Brandy, and Shaniqua come from poor neighborhoods and broken homes. I'm just curious about you guys when you first came here and saw the facilities here.
It was like a computer, like we have our own computers back here. It's like, wow.
My student home had a pool table in the basement, a ping pong table.
The campus was really beautiful. It wasn't anything like where I'd come from.
The 1,200 or so students live in spacious houses, about 10 kids per house, without a financial worry in the world.
I tell people, why shouldn't these children have the same opportunities as middle class and upper middle class families have?
William Lepley is president and CEO of the school.
You think you're the only school in the country that doesn't hit up its alumni 5 or 10 or 15 times a year for money?
We don't ask once.
Because one donor was enough. Milton Hershey made his fortune mass-producing chocolate. His name and spirit are everywhere in Hershey. Even the streetlights are sculpted in the shape of Hershey kisses, both wrapped and unwrapped. Milton Hershey and his wife couldn't have children of their own, so they started a school for white orphan boys in 1909. In 1923, the New York Times announced that Hershey had set up a deed of trust giving virtually his entire fortune, over $60 million, to the school. In the 70s, it began accepting non-whites and girls. To get in, a student's family or guardian applies. Today, most students need proven academic skills to have a C average and score in the top half on national achievement tests. And their families generally have financial or emotional problems, or both.
Do you think that coming here prevents a life of, I don't know, drug abuse?
Absolutely. I mean, in our own small way, we are trying to contribute to America's effort to break the cycle of poverty. I mean, many of these children would be in foster care, or Lord knows where else or what else may happen to them if they weren't here.
I'd probably be drinking out all types of night with my friends. This is very irresponsible.
I would probably be pregnant, if not already have a kid. I would not be in high school, and I would probably be a drug user.
Do you think the fact that your brother became hooked on drugs was a major reason why you were brought here?
Yeah, I think a lot of my family was hooked on drugs, and my brother recently passed away.
How old was he?
21. And I know...
Drugs?
Heroin overdose. So I know that my mom, she feels better knowing that she got me out of that situation.
Chonda was sent to Milton Hershey by her aunt.
Where was your mother?
She was up in Erie Prison.
In prison?
Yes.
Do you visit your mom?
It was through glass and telephone. I don't like it. I wouldn't be able to actually touch her, give her a kiss on the cheek, or hug her or something.
Andrew had been living with his great-grandmother, who became too old to take care of him.
Would your life be much different?
I'd be in a foster home and probably lead to drugs and probably drop out of high school.
How are you now? You a pretty good student?
Yes, I'm passing my classes. I'm doing well. I'm planning for college.
In fact, they're all planning for college. The Milton Hershey School pays for its graduates' higher education, whether it's Harvard or hairdressing school. And while they're here, they get free medical care, free dental care, and new clothing from the school store. The school can afford all this and a whole lot more. To this day, the school remains the largest landowner in Hershey, the largest shareholder in Hershey Foods, and the sole owner of the Hershey Entertainment and Resorts Company, which owns hotels and an amusement park. The place is soaking in money. That $60 million endowment is now worth nearly $5 billion. Most of that money can't be spent according to rules laid down in Hershey's deed of trust. The school gets by on the income the endowment generates, which leaves it in the extraordinary position of having about $500 million in the bank. And it's having a hard time spending it because Hershey, in laying down his rules, said it can only be spent on the kids and the school. I'm just wondering to what extent the ghost of Milton Hershey still hovers over this place. I mean, do you have to ponder with every decision what Hershey might have wanted?
We use his deed of trust as sort of our compass, because that deed of trust is a genius in the sense of that it gives the Board of Managers broad discretion. Actually, I like the guidance that he gave us, and I think he'd be proud of this place today.
He would be utterly appalled.
Rick Fuad, a lawyer, and Joe Burning, an auto mechanic, are both graduates of the school, both part of a dissident group of alumni who want to overthrow the school administration because, they say, it has trampled on Milton Hershey's legacy.
We want to get rid of Dr. Lepley and the Board of Managers.
One of their complaints is that in spite of its vast wealth, the school is not finding the neediest children, poor children with poor grades.
We don't want to start with children who are already making it. We want to start with children who aren't making it. That's why Mr. Hershey built this school.
These members of the Alumni Association accuse the school of departing radically from Milton Hershey's vision of a rural campus spread over 12,000 acres, where kids lived on farms, cared for the livestock, and learned vocational skills as well as the 3 R's. Today, the school sits on 2,700 acres, and it looks like suburbia. Some of the old Hershey farms stand abandoned, and others have been leased or sold. Many alumni object to the emphasis on good grades in admissions policy. Rick Fuad believes the school has stopped looking for kids like the kid he was.
I had severe behavioral problems. I had pretty severe emotional problems. I was constantly either kicked out of class or truant. And I went to the school, and it turned my entire life around.
Would you be admitted to the school today?
I was told I would not be admitted for academic reasons and for behavioral reasons. And that says a lot, considering that I ended up going from Milton Hershey School to the University of Pennsylvania and then on to getting a law degree.
The alumni say that you're turning this place into what they describe as a very fancy prep school, which was not what Milton Hershey wanted.
Well, first I'd disagree with their statement of what they think Mr. Hershey would have described the school day. I think he'd been very pleased.
When this school was set up, kids lived on farms, did farm chores as part of their education. You decided to change that. Why?
Why we changed is basically we've got to prepare these kids for a dramatically changing society and world in which they're going to face.
When the administration decided to scrap vocational courses, some alumni were appalled.
They were going to scuttle it altogether. It was going to be completely eliminated from the curriculum.
Joe Burning and other alumni convinced the state attorney general's office, which oversees the trust, to make the school keep some vocational training because not all students are college material. But the emphasis here is clearly on college prep. Over 80% of the students go on to academic higher education.
Our goal here is to give them choices and options, not to only prepare them for college. At the same time, we all know that education is one of the ways, a key way to break the cycle of poverty.
The alumni's biggest concern is that while the school's endowment has increased 30-fold in 50 years, its enrollment has remained about the same as it was 50 years ago.
Mr. Hershey's deed of trust was very clear about what he wanted his money used for, to directly benefit as many children as the income from the trust will allow.
It's really ridiculous when you even think about it. I mean, why wouldn't they serve more kids? It just doesn't make sense.
But Jack Gabig, an alumnus who's on the board of managers, says the school is expanding beyond the current 1,200 children. But it's not as simple as just bringing in a lot more kids.
When you expand, for every 10 students you take in, you need another home. For every home you have, you need house parents. And then when you get into the hundreds, you're looking at teachers, and you're looking at staff, and you're looking at maintenance people. It takes time to build.
The school may have nearly as many staff members as students, but that doesn't mean the school doesn't have serious discipline problems. Lately, there have been a number of cases of sexual and other assaults by older children against younger ones. The school's been attacked for spending money just because it has it, like this major rebuilding program, which opened with great fanfare this year. But the dedication ceremony last spring was invaded by hundreds of members of the Alumni Association who came to protest. Proof, perhaps, that money doesn't buy happiness, but it does buy a lot of people who will tell you how to spend it.
There was no need to spend some $250 million to create a facility that did not add capacity for any additional children.
But the argument could be made, look, because it is so rich, why shouldn't it be luxurious? Why shouldn't these poor kids get a terrific hockey arena or all of these things that rich kids have access to?
But we're not saying that they should cut costs with the children. That's not the point. However, what they should do is spend more money to benefit more children.
They're likely to get their wish. After investigating the alumni's complaints, the state attorney general's office last week recommended major changes. Given that there are millions of poor children in this country, the state called on the school to ensure that all its money and land be used to help as many of those children as possible, regardless of their grades. In essence, to return to the basic ideas of Milton Hershey.
bitch!
Julie's really suffering.
Yeah, she's getting a bad cold.
Head all blocked up.
Stiff and achy all over.
Better get that new Alka-Seltzer Plus.
Oh, yeah.
Introducing a new Alka-Seltzer Plus with a new effervescent cold-fighting formula to break up nasal congestion and release you from your worst cold misery. New effervescent Alka-Seltzer Plus breaks up your worst cold. And now there's new Alka-Seltzer Plus Flu. Great tasting relief for your worst flu symptoms.
I know my daughter. She's just like me. Works for every grade she gets. She thinks I dress like an idiot. And she wishes her chest were bigger. She knows people who do drugs. I know she doesn't do them. I know, because I ask. I ask all the time.
So, we're all here because of this new Windex Multi-Surface with Vinegar? Yeah, this Multi-Surface. Looks like trouble.
Introducing new Windex Multi-Surface with Vinegar. You can use it most everywhere to clean lots of surfaces. In your bathroom, your kitchen, all over your home.
Multi-Surface? Hey, Wilson, fly down and see if it works on glass, too. Ooh, works on glass. Yup, works on glass.
New Windex Multi-Surface with Vinegar. Multi-Surface means multi-shine. S.C. Johnson and Family Company.
I love to keep a clean club, but the boys get so rambunctious sometimes. Nice catch! Hence, my new Bissell Pro Heat Protect Beauty. It's the only one that thoroughly cleans and provides Scotch Guard protection all in one beautiful machine. Smoothies! Scotch Guard protection. It's cool.
Now clean and protect with Bissell.
It'll put any neatnik in hog heaven.
Bissell. We mean clean.
Howie, what's a good gift to get for somebody you really care about?
Football tickets.
No. Something you get more use out of.
Season tickets.
Something from the heart.
Luxury suite.
Oh, no!
No, Howie, it's a free Nokia phone from Verizon Wireless, just in time for the holidays, so it makes a great gift.
And football tickets.
Now at Radio Shack, get a free Nokia 5100 series phone after instant rebate. Plus, get 3,500 minutes for only $35 monthly access. Radio Shack.
The people have spoken. Ray's been nominated for 2 People's Choice Awards. CBS Monday.
What your kids can learn from Harry Potter, tonight at 10.
Whenever there's work being done, there's Carhartt. Whenever you want to slip on a pair of jeans that feel like they were made just for you, there's Carhartt too. And where better to shop for classic Carhartt clothing than Blaine's Farm and Fleet. Rugged workwear, outdoor wear, and a big selection of hard-working, easy-wearing jeans. Right now at Farm and Fleet, Carhartt Relaxed Fit jeans are only $25.99. Blaine's Farm and Fleet and Carhartt.
This holiday from Honda, we've rolled back MSRPs $200 on our smallest XRs, CRs, and smallest Sport Tracks. On our bigger XRs, we've added bonus bucks, $200 towards merchandise. And on all XRs and CRs, there's no payment and no interest for 3 months, and no down payment with the Honda card. Gifts that go, going all out for the holidays.
See the gifts that go at Rob's Performance, Don and Roy's Motorsports, Cedar Creek Motorsports.
From what follows, you may think Andy has taken up scuba diving, but that's not it at all. It's, well, let him tell you.
This is something I want for Christmas that hasn't been invented yet. It'll scan a newspaper and feed the information directly into my brain without my having to read anything. This is the Sunday New York Times, 6 pounds of it. Maybe the best newspaper there's ever been, and it makes me feel terrible. I end every day with a great sense of guilt because I haven't read the whole thing. The Los Angeles Times, Chicago Tribune, Miami Herald, Washington Post, all good newspapers, but look at the size of them. This issue of the Times alone has 525 pages. If they filled every page with 4,000 words times 525 pages, that's more than 2 million words. Half the pages are pictures or advertising. Times is using bigger pictures, so cut that in 2. Still, 1 million words of editorial copy. The average person reads 150 words a minute. So if you read for 8 hours a day, it would take you 14 days to read this Sunday edition of the New York Times, by which time, of course, you'd have 2 more in the driveway. And that isn't all either, because before you start the Times, you have to read your local newspaper, you know, to see if your name's in it. The Times, network television news broadcasts, 60 Minutes, none of them would exist without the money they get from advertising. This paper is fat because they need space to print the ads that pay for writing, reporting, editing, printing. The Times gets about $75,000 a page Sundays. Times 250 pages, this edition would bring in $18 million. What you pay for the paper is petty cash. How did it ever happen that so many good things are so dependent on the business of selling ourselves stuff, advertising? If you had to pay for a good newspaper, it'd probably cost you $20 a day. And 60 Minutes isn't 60 minutes, it's 45 minutes. Without commercials, we'd have to charge you $20 to watch it. When Mike is on, it'd probably be a little extra. It's all paid for by advertising, but don't kid yourselves. You pay for it every time you buy something. It's strange we don't face the facts and pay for things directly. Now, if I could only get one of these for television, so I didn't have to watch that either.
I'm Steve Croft. We'll be back next week with another edition of 60 Minutes. Here's what's coming up this week from CBS News.